Hi everybody and welcome to Unwind and Design. So I'm going to be starting you off first with what we are going to be having in front of us. So starting off with our brushes, make sure that you guys have a bin for some water. We have our cup. We're going to be using the large background brush, size 8 flat brush, size 8 round tip, and a detail liner brush. Next, make sure that you have a napkin or something to dry your brush with. You don't want to add too much water to your paint or else it's going to get runny. Okay, and the colors that we are going to be using today are going to be fuchsia. You can make this with a little bit of red, a drop of black, and some white. Blue, aqua green. You can make that with a little bit of green and blue and some white. And we're going to be using green, black, yellow, and white. Okay, so just so you guys take into consideration, just because your paint is on right straight out of the bottle doesn't mean that it's ready to use. So make sure you pay attention to how much water you're adding. You want to make sure that your paint is nice and smooth and manageable. You don't want it to be overwatered and be runny, so that it goes everywhere or paints on very lightly. We're going to be grabbing it nice and thick. Okay, so right in the middle. So I'm going to be putting this down. Okay, so let's start. We're going to start off first with our background brush. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to be picking up our large background brush. We're going to be dabbing it in our napkin to make sure that we release any excess water. So the first color we are going to be starting with is going to be our aqua green. Why? Because it is the lightest color and we always want to start with our lightest color in the background and then move on to darker colors as we layer our colors from there. So next we are going to be picking up our turquoise and we are going to be creating a horizon line right in the center. That's where our sky meets our ground. We are going to be drawing a horizontal line, making sure that we keep our pressure consistent. That is a heavy pressure first to release the paint and then release your pressure as you go off to the sides. Okay, when you first press hard, that makes the paint come out, and then as you release tension, it creates a wisp look towards the edges. Remember not to paint the sides. We just kind of want to release to create that look on the right so that it looks a bit scratchy on there. Okay, and our bristles should open up and create that effect for us. So kind of start with a heavy pressure and then release your pressure towards the end. Next, we're going to be bringing that down for our water. We are not going to paint all the way towards the bottom. We're going to keep it centered as much as possible. And you will be seeing some white underneath. So make sure that you don't fully paint that in. We are now going to be picking up some white and we are going to use that to create a variety of colors on our ocean. So we need to remember to keep the same method we were using before of solid pressure in the center and then release. You don't want to press too hard so that you don't combine all of those colors. Next, we're going to be picking up some light and dark blue, which means we're going to grab our dark blue and add some white in it to brighten it up a little bit. And we're going to continue to add that texture just like we did the white on our ocean. So you can make one solid line, you can make a couple of broken lines. You kind of want to keep a light pressure. You don't want to press so hard. Just drag your brush lightly over the top. Make sure you don't combine your colors. You want each color to stand out on its own. Maybe you can do the same technique in each of the individual lines, kind of press and then release off to the edges. And we want to get some lines. Some may be broken like the ones I just painted right now, or they may be complete like the ones that you see above. But you're going to continue just to have some fun with it. Remember to always pick up some water to keep your paint nice and moist and to get the best blendable look that you can. Next, we're going to be making sure that we wash off our brush, and the next color we are going to be using is going to be some fuchsia with white. I always like to use the sides of my paint, not fully in the center, so that I can always pull some white and still have some left over in case I want to use it later. So we're going to start off with that white. We are not going to go all the way up on our canvas. We are going to kind of go about halfway up the blank space, because as we go higher, we're going to be adding some darker blue, and that's going to create kind of like a more purplish look as it descends into night. So we're going to be painting from the center upwards, creating an oval shape. Remember to keep the same technique you did as before: pressure in the center, release as you go towards the end, and we're going to be going back and forth between that pink and white. So here's a little tip. If you see that your paint starts to get scratchy, or you see waffling, which means you get to see the canvas material in the bottom like you see there, you have to remember to go back and pick up some water. That means that you need a little bit more liquid in there to assist the blending process. So as you dip it in water, kind of tap it dry, pick up some more paint, and then continue that process again. Try to pay attention to whether your paint is dry or smooth. So little by little, we are going to begin to paint upwards, minimizing our oval and bringing it to a peak. Next, the following color we're going to be picking up is going to be some of that blue, lightened with a little bit of white. We don't want it to be too dark yet, and we are going to paint it on our damp fuchsia paint, applying the same type of pressure and technique we've been using. Hopefully it'll blend in smoothly with your wet paint, and you'll start to get a really pretty purple hue. And we are going to work that blue up towards the top, also minimizing the shape to an oval. The following color that we are going to be using is going to be a purple. We're going to be mixing our blue and some white into our fuchsia to create a lighter purple, and we are going to be applying that purple directly on our canvas on top of our fuchsia and blue. We're going to continue to use the same pressure of going heavy and then lighter towards the edges, and I'm going to be using the thin side of my brush instead of the wide side to create more of a line look on my sky. As I work my way up, it's going to be getting darker as well. The next color that we are going to be working with is going to be our dark blue, and it's going to be on the highest part of the sky. We're going to slightly start to blend it in towards the bottom of the sky just to make sure that it looks cohesive. Always remember to pick up a little bit of water to continue to keep your paint nice and moist. Working on a wet background allows for better smoothing. So here you're going to see that our lines are a little rough. We are going to be working them and having them spread a little bit more as we get towards the bottom. But here's a little trick to smooth that out. You're going to wash off your brush, make sure that you tap it dry, and then you're going to be picking up a little bit of white, just a tad bit, okay, not a lot. Make sure that your paint is nice and smooth. Make sure your brush is not too wet, and you're going to apply the least amount of pressure you can, just barely dragging your white over the top to lighten up your canvas. That's going to start to create kind of a cloudy look, and it's not going to be such an intense blue. If you find yourselves going over the edge, don't worry, that's fine. We are going to be painting that over with white to correct it. So next we're going to be combining our colors, bringing our white down to our fuchsia and then back up to our blue, so that creates an even gradient. We do not want our colors to be just placed side by side so that they look uneven. Instead, we want to overlap them so that it looks prettier and more realistic as we go up and down. So remember to keep in mind to relax your pressure to get a better blending effect and get a nicer sky. Next, we're going to be picking up our detail brush, making sure that's nice and wet. And we're going to pick up some white and start creating some stars. Make some thin stars with minimal pressure or some thicker, bigger stars with a little bit more pressure on your brush. And you're going to continue that all the way around our sky, decreasing our stars as we go lower. We want to keep most of our bulk towards the top. So next we're going to be painting more of a detailed star. I picked up a little bit of water and we're going to start from the center out. Oops. Okay, that had a little bit too much water. So make sure that you don't add too much water because then it's just going to come out the moment that you press. So all you need to do is just dry your brush, go over the top, and use a technique called lifting to kind of erase that line and then go over it with the more dry brush, just so that you can make those lines. So our shape for our cute little star is going to be a large cross with a small X on the inside. And the way we're going to do that is starting in the center, pulling out, making our larger cross, and then continuing our details on the inside for the small X. And you can continue that all around your canvas with as many stars as you want. Keep in mind that we are using the same technique of pressure and release to create these stars, and that's how you're going to get those pointed edges. So this is what your painting should look like, a little bit completed. If you guys are finished with your stars, then you can go ahead and air dry or blow dry your canvas to move on to the next part. Next, we're going to be picking up our flat brush, our square brush. We're going to wash that off and make sure to tap it a little dry. We want to add some moisture to our black paint. And next, we're going to start on the left and create little waves right along the top of our horizon line. These little waves, we're going to be making them different sizes. They're going to be our mountains. And we're going to stop where we feel we want to start our lighthouse. So these mountains are going to dictate how wide our lighthouse is going to be. We want to leave it roughly about maybe 2 to 3 inches on an 11 by 14 canvas. Maybe 4 would be nice too, but it is really up to you. And we are going to be creating a line that's not going to be going straight down. It's going to kind of expand towards the bottom since our lighthouse is thicker in the bottom and thinner towards the top. So we're going to bring that line straight up, that line straight down. Again, the space that you leave in between is going to determine how thick your lighthouse is going to be. And we are just going to continue that mountain towards the right, remembering to maintain that horizon line as straight as you can. Okay, so we don't want it to be too squiggly. We want to keep it nice and straight and sharp so it looks like a crisp line in the background of our lighthouse. So right over the top, we're going to be creating a thick horizontal rectangle line, and this is going to be the base for our gates and our dome over the top of our lighthouse. I'm going to begin to fill that out, and then I'm going to go over the top of that and start creating a smaller rectangle with 2 lines coming down towards the side. That's going to be our second level. And then up towards the top, we are going to be making our windows. So we're going to be creating 2 lines parallel to each other at the end of that rectangle. And we are going to make a third and fourth line in the center to separate those windows before we fully close that in with a rectangular horizontal line. Then we will be coming over the top, creating a dome shape and filling that in. And then you're going to go above that first dome and create a smaller one above that and a smaller one above that using the corner of your brush. Remember that your brush is a tool and there's many ways to use it. The following thing that we'll be doing now is grabbing our detail brush, making sure that you add water to that. Pay attention to how much water you add. You don't want to add too much water. And we're going to begin to work with our detail brush to make our lines. So if maybe you made them a little crooked, a little too thick, a little too thin, this is a time to go in with your detail brush and kind of straighten it and even it out on either side that might be a little off. Again, watch your water. You don't want a lot of water to release the moment that you press down, so make sure that you're mindful of that. Next, we will be grabbing some black and attaching lines angled from the top of the rectangle to the base of our lighthouse. Next, we will be drawing a parallel horizontal line underneath the windowsill of the top of the lighthouse. And we're going to begin to create vertical lines going up and down at the end, joining the gate with the bottom base of the rectangular section of the lighthouse. Next, we will be using our large background flat brush. And we are going to be washing that off, picking up a little bit of water, making sure we incorporate that into our white paint. And then we are going to be using the edge of our brush to make sure that we can keep a consistent straight line from top all the way to the bottom. We are going to be painting this nice and slow just to make sure we leave a thick amount of paint over the top to cover the background that we painted in previously. Depending on how thick you pick up your paint, you might have to add several coats to the lighthouse just to ensure that we can cover up the background like I mentioned before. So if you're finished with the first coat, allow it to dry and then come back and paint a second or third coat over the top until you cannot see the background. Make sure that you fan your piece before each coat to make sure that it's fully dry and that it creates a thicker paint layer before you move on. Then make sure you make your final edits, like going over the black outlines again, just as an example. Next, we will be picking up our round tip brush. We're going to make sure that we wipe that off, and we're going to be starting off with a dark green. We're going to be doing this while we allow our lighthouse to dry. We work our way back and forth, but we're going to be picking up a drop of black and adding it to our green to make it a hint darker. We're going to be working on our bushes now, and usually to make sure that we add dimension to our bushes, we tend to work with the darkest colors first and then work our way up to a lighter color. You also have the option of using a basic chip textured brush. You can get this at the Home Depot, Michael's, but I'm going to be using my round tip and I'm going to be picking up my dark green and I'm going to begin on the left corner and I'm going to just start to create these little dab designs. You don't want to make them super close. You do want to leave some space. Let me zoom in here. And you are going to be applying just dabs of that paint so that the bristles create a faux leafy texture of what is the bushes. So we're going to continue to do that all the way on the side, and we are going to be going outside of our oval design just to give it a three-dimensional look. So just as a reminder, the dark green is a shadow, and we're going to be continuing this from our left corner all the way to our right, remembering to add different levels and patterns underneath our painting. So speeding up the video, you can see that I'm continuing to spread this all around. I am bringing it up towards the top, surrounding the base so you can't tell where it begins. And I am beginning to also be a little scattered underneath towards the bottom so that it looks like that those leaves are coming out of the picture a little bit. So you can go ahead, take liberty in how you do the placement of these leaves, but just remember to keep kind of a scattered, not too organized look for them. Next, we will be applying our second mid-tone color, and it's going to be our green with a tad bit of white. And you can also feel free to add a little bit of that aqua green on there just to brighten it up slightly. And that's going to be the second mid-tone we're going to be adding to our green leaves just to add dimension, like I mentioned before. After this, we will be adding a highlight, but for now, we're adding this, and we're going to repeat the same process that we did previously, spreading it completely across our bushes. Pay attention to the gaps that you're leaving in between these highlights that we're creating. Try to understand that the darker green that we placed before is the shadow, and what we're doing right now is the midtone. So you still want to see that shadow in the background. That's what's going to give it more of a dimension. So go around, spread that mid-tone green, but remember to leave gaps so that we can still see that dark green beneath. And you're going to completely take that across and kind of replicate the same kind of pattern we were following previously in filling out those leaves. Next, we will be picking up a green and mixing it into our yellow. It's always easier to mix the darkest color into the lightest color. So we are going to be combining that, creating a lime green, and that's going to be our third level of color on our bushes, and it's going to be our highlight. So we did a shadow, mid-tone, and now we're doing the highlight. And you're going to come in and also spread that around. You're not going to be as tight with the strokes as you were with the dark green. You're actually going to be a little bit looser, and you're just going to go around and be a little bit more meticulous with your placement of your highlight. You want to place it just on top. You still want to see all those layers of color from the mid-tone to the shadow. And you're just going to completely bring that across our bush section. So the next two steps of highlight we're going to be adding is going to be yellow, and you're going to concentrate your yellow and your yellow with white in smaller sections that are more clustered together. That's going to make sure that you can see through all of that highlight to the shadow spaces behind. Again, use yellow and then yellow with white a little bit more sparingly, not as clustered as you did before. So next, using our detail brush, we're going to be making a very light gray. To your white, make sure that you add just a drop of gray. Again, using the side of your paint, we're going to be using the tip of the hair, barely scratching it onto our canvas on the right-hand side of the ovals above our dome. We're going to go on the right, create a little line towards our left, and then very lightly release our pressure as we lift towards our left, creating those highlights. This is what it looks like zoomed in. You can see the detail. We are trying to make it look as if the highlight is off to the right hand side, and we are creating those very thin scratchy lines towards our left, again releasing our pressure, barely scratching the hairs of our brush on our canvas. Then we're going to make one solid line on the left hand side to create a highlight. Next, moving down to the bottom of the dome to bring out that one. We're making one solid line across the center to bring that dome to a close. And then we are gonna start doing the same effect that we did with our ovals above, creating lines from our right to our left hand side, releasing our pressure again over and over again so that we have the effect of some highlight or some moonlight hitting the side of the dome of our lighthouse. We are also going to add some cross lines going from the bottom of our left corner towards the top of our right corner in the center to create a little highlight on that dome as well in the center, kind of like a glow. Then we're going to grab some more of our light gray. Make sure that you remember to wet your brush to make your color more controllable. And we are going to begin to outline the top left corner towards the right corner of our base of our little rail there. Remembering to create some scratches towards the bottom, very light pressure. We're going to outline the right hand side and pull towards the left with that white just to bring an even highlight underneath. That's going to be the base highlight to our frame holding up our rails. We're going to also just add a little line inside of the bottom lines that are holding up that rail, and we are going to add some highlight to the sides of our windows. Okay, make it look like the moonlight is shining through the window, creating a little highlight there as well. If you would like to come in with some black later on to straighten up those white lines, you can totally go back and make some edits. That's the beautiful thing about this kind of painting, that you can always go back and forth. Next, using our gray lines, we're just going to add some more detail, straighten up some lines above on our dome. And then we're going to pick up some more of this light gray, and we are going to start to outline our rail a little bit. So we're going to go above our rail, try to keep your wrists straight so that your line doesn't come out so wobbly. Make sure that you have enough water so that your paint doesn't stick onto your canvas. And then we're going to create these very thin lines like we did on our windows on the side of each of the lines on our rails, just to make them stand out against the black or the darkness of our windows or the back wall of our rail. So that's what that highlight is going to help us do. So again, make sure that you don't press too hard. Make sure that your paint is nice and moist. It's going to be easier to slide if your paint is creamier. And we're just going to keep doing that all the way across. Again, if it comes out a little crooked, you can always come back with a little bit of black and straighten that out. Continuing with that highlight, I'm trying to be as detailed as possible. This picture is a little bit more rustic, so if you want to be rough with your white, you can. If you want to be a little bit more illustrative, and like I mentioned before, come back and re-outline with some of that black, you can. I am going to grab a little bit of black just to fix that rectangular part below. And then I'm going to use my black to create the little antenna above the highest oval on the top. So again, pick up some water, make sure that your color is nice and straight. Again, you can go around and straighten any lines that you like, but I'm going to come in and do this antenna towards the top, trying to keep my pressure as light as possible. I'm going to come back and straighten up anything that I didn't like. And then you're going to have a hassle having to go back and forth with this color. Next, we're going to be making a glaze. A glaze is a transparent color. Is when you add a lot of water to your paint to make sure that it's a little bit see-through. It is a little runny. When you use a glaze, you have to make sure that your brush is
So
dry
now I'm adding
and
another
that
layer
you
of
are
that
picking up
glaze
that
over the
wet
top
paint, or else your paint is just going to go everywhere. Glazes
until I
are
get the
really
shade
good
that
to
I
use
want
when
for a
you don't
shadow.
want a very dramatic color and when you want to build up your color
So this
by
is a great way
levels.
to add
So
shadows a
you
little bit at a
layer a light
time.
color. If you want it
If you
darker,
want to
you
have maybe a
continue
little bit
to
more
add those
control of the
layers
color that
until
you're
you get it
getting.
to the consistency that you want. But in this case, we're going to be adding those glazes to create a very light shadow towards the left of our lighthouse before we go in and
What
draw
I like to
our
do is come in
windows.
with
I
my
am using my
napkin and just
square
dab the
size
tips a
8
little bit.
brush for this. If it becomes a little
Again,
bit
hopefully by
too
then your
runny,
paint
you
should be a
can
little
come in
dry.
with a napkin and dab it a
So that
little
you can
bit
slowly
and then dry off your brush and
erase
pull
some of
that
that color.
wet paint down so that it dries and leaves a
When we're
very
done with that
light
glaze, let me
mark
show you what that looks
because
like
you're pulling
on a
that
darker
color out.
scale. You see how pretty this looks here? We
Next,
added some
we are
shadow.
going to try to
So we are going
measure
to be grabbing now
where we're going to be
our
placing
block.
our windows. Okay, so for this, you can wet your brush, pick up a little bit of black,
And then
and
we are
we
going
are
to
going to
go
try to
towards the
measure towards
center
the
right
middle
of
right
our
of our
lighthouse.
lighthouse, maybe about 2 fingers worth of space from the top of the rail down, and we are going to be making a longish rectangular shape.
And
You
we
can
are
try
going
to
to
straighten
draw
it up a
these
little bit.
long windows on
If
the
maybe
right
you did it a
hand
little bit
side.
crooked, try to
So again, they're
press a
just
little bit harder to release
longish
that
rectangle
paint.
shapes.
And then we are
We're
going to
going
be
to
making
skip a
3
little
of
bit and
these
we're going to do the
windows,
next
leaving a
one
little bit
down.
of a gap in between each of them. Next, we're going to be using our round tip brush. Make sure that it's nice and wet so that we can mix our paint. We're going to be mixing our blue and white to create a very light color. Always mixing in our darker color into our lighter color. Then I'm going to dry off my brush and I'm going to use the tips of the hair to create a scraping effect above my mountains to give the effect of a highlight over the top. So we're going to continue that from the left to the right, creating a little bit of a scratch like we did over the top of the dome of the lighthouse. And we're going to continue it all on the background of those mountains. Then I'm going to wash my brush again. I'm going to add a little bit more water to it. And with the blue that I already have on my brush, I'm going to spread it as a wash over the left hand side where we placed our gray. Not fully closing our lines, but just creating some broken scratchy lines to give it another level of highlight over that left hand side. It's going to be like a highlighted shadow. I know it sounds a little complicated, but it really makes your painting pop, and it's going to combine the lighthouse with your mountains and bring the whole thing together. Since there's blue in the back and there's blue in the front, in addition to the blue that we're going to add to our flowers, it's all going to be combined. If you want to add water directly to your blue to spread it out, it'll give you a more glossy, highlighted effect. Next, we're going to wash off our round tip brush and we are going to be picking up some of that fuchsia and some white. We're not going to fully want to blend this color. We want to have both colors layered in that brush so that when we press it down to create our flowers, which is what we're going to be doing next, both colors can come out. So let me show you on my hand what these flowers are going to look like. You're going to start off with two C's sort of facing each other. Then we're going to go around and make broken lines just to bring that flower to a close. Okay, so we're going to surround our flower and we are going to make sure that you can see all of those colors. That's why we pick them both up without combining them. And you're going to be bringing that to a smaller scale. Let me zoom in so you can see that. And you're going to be doing them scattered out. You're not really going to be clustering them as much as we did our grass. You're going to go around, space them out, and decide where you want them so that they cover the full spectrum of the grass. Next, with our detail brush, we're going to be combining some blue and white. Again, make sure that you keep both colors on your brush. And we're going to be creating overlapping dots on the sides of our roses to kind of fill in the space in our grass. Again, you don't want to cover all of the grass, and some of your dots might be going over the lighthouse or over the ocean. That's perfectly fine. Just go around on the sides of your roses, deciding if you want to do it on both sides or on just one side to add some more detail to that grass section. Next, with our detail brush, we're going to pick up a little bit of white and do our outlines on the right hand side of our windows. Then moving on, we are picking up our large background brush, make sure it's nice and soft, and we're going to start to brush in with multiple coats of white the sides to shape our exterior design into an oval. So again, we're pressing and releasing pressure, and we are only doing that on the ocean and the sky and the mountains. We are not going to be brushing in towards our leaves and our bushes. We want that to continue to be a three-dimensional look. So we're only going to go around through our sky to create a better, and our ocean to create a better shape, and to give it a little bit of a form. So we have now reached our final step, which is going to be our signature. I used my detail brush with a little bit of water and black to make sure that it matched our lighthouse and our mountains, and so that it would stand out in front of our rose bushes. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. This has been a lot of fun, and I hope it was as much fun for you as it was for me. For more information, for more videos, live classes, or Zoom classes, make sure that you check out my website, www.unwindanddesign.org. Thanks, guys, and see you soon.